This week on the Daily Dose, we're in search of a faith for the rest of us. Because here's what I think. There are far too many of us who have bought into this idea that faith is like a hoity-toity club. And in that club, there are all these unwritten rules that sort of kill all the joy that I think God intended for us. They may say they have Jesus in their hearts, but it seems more like they don't even have a pulse. Let's be honest. Gang, when Jesus roamed the earth, he was never into starting clubs, and he certainly wasn't boring. In fact, he always seemed to be inviting people to join him on an adventure. And on that adventure, he cared for people's hearts, and he taught them how to care for one another's hearts. And it's wild what happened. One time, Jesus was having a party, and the house was so full that literally there were these guys who tore a hole in the roof and lowered their buddy down so that he could meet Jesus. Another time, out in the wilderness, Jesus fed thousands of people with a few fish and loaves of bread. Another time, to keep the party going at a wedding dance, Jesus turned water into wine. If you're tired of faith that's sort of milquetoast, this week on the Daily Dose, we're talking about a faith for the rest of us. A while back, our family took a little vacation up north, and when we got back, we asked our teenage boys, "What did you think of vacation?" Do you know what they said? They said, "We were bored." I said, "Bored? How could you be bored? We were on vacation." And while we're at it, that's not a word that we use in our family. Thank you very much. How does this happen? I remember when our kids were little, we'd go, for example, up to the North Shore, Lake Superior on vacation, and all we had to do was stop at a beach and let them out, and they'd throw rocks out into the lake for literally hours. To the boys, it was like they were on this exotic adventure in some far-off land. They'd run to the beach, falling into the lake with their clothes on. They'd throw rock after rock, giggling hysterically as though they'd just won the rock-throwing championship of the world. And when it was time to leave, they'd just cry and cry because they were having way too much fun. Even at home, when our boys were little, all we had to do was to open the cupboard in the kitchen, you know, the one with the plastic cups and containers and Tupperware, and that was hours of fun. How could they say they were bored? I don't know what it is, but over time, culture has this way of squeezing joy out of us, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem the older we get, the harder joy is to come by sometimes? It's like everything is been there, done that. More and more is simply routine or ordinary or average or mundane. And here's what I think. I think the same thing happens when it comes to our faith. What was meant to be this great adventure, this grand adventure with God, we turn it into a requirement. What was meant to be joy, we've made it into painstaking ritual. What was meant to be a life-giving relationship with a best friend, we sometimes turn into an item on a spiritual checklist. You know this. Far too often, there are certain brands of Christians who have this way of sucking every bit of joy out of church and the life of faith, as if God wanted us to suffer. They suffered, so we have to suffer. And my experience is that those people are some of the crabbiest, unhappy people I've ever met, which is sad. Because I think faith was meant to be fun. God wants us to be happy. God knows that life is hard, and faith was meant to bring a measure of hope. I don't know why that's so hard for some to believe. A mentor of mine once said, "It's a sin for church to be boring." I couldn't agree more. I think every day God is inviting us on an adventure. It's not one where there's a rigid itinerary, because those kind of vacations, they aren't fun. The adventure God's inviting us on, it's filled with the unexpected, the unpredictable, a ton of inspiration, and a whole lot of joy.